I retired earlier than most people I knew, not because I had a perfect plan, but because I learned to stop letting money run my life. The relief felt like a weight falling off my chest, and I want you to feel that too. This video is for anyone in the United States who's staring at a 401k statement, worrying about Social Security timing, or wondering if Medicare will cover the bills that keep them up at night. You're not alone if inflation, market crashes, and the possibility of outliving your savings keep replaying in your mind. Those are real threats, and they deserve clear, usable answers. I'll share the mistakes I made, the hard choices I faced with taxes and health insurance, and the small, stubborn shifts that changed everything for me. You'll hear concrete moments where a bad decision almost derailed retirement and practical moves that created safety without stealing joy from life right now. This isn't salesy theory. These are American realities: timing Social Security, understanding required minimum distributions, Medicare enrollment windows, and how to survive a recession. By the end of this video, you'll have a realistic roadmap for protecting your money and designing a life that doesn't revolve around anxiety, even if you're still a few years from retiring. Stay with me for one honest hour of stories, numbers, and choices that could turn your retirement from a fear into a plan. Number 1. Setting up the main problem. Most people in the United States don't actually fear retirement itself. They fear what happens after the paychecks stop, when the world suddenly becomes quieter and every financial decision feels heavier than the last. In my early 50s, I realized that even with a decent 401k, a paid-off car, and a modest emergency fund, I was still waking up at 3 a.m. thinking about market crashes and the rising cost of healthcare. The truth is, most Americans aren't struggling because they're irresponsible. They're struggling because the retirement system is a maze, and one wrong step with Social Security timing or Medicare enrollment can cost thousands. I remember sitting with a cup of cold coffee, scrolling through articles about sequence of returns risk, and feeling like the ground could shift under me at any time. And that's the core problem. People heading toward retirement aren't just trying to plan their finances. They're trying to build safety in a world where the economy changes faster than their confidence. You want freedom, you want stability, and you want to know that the life you worked for won't turn into a constant battle with bills, taxes, and uncertainty. That's the tension we face, and it's the starting point that pushes many people to ask, how do I retire without fear controlling every decision I make? Number 2, emotional and psychological realities of retirement. No one warns you that the first morning of retirement in America can feel strangely overwhelming, almost like stepping into a room where the noise has been turned off and you're not sure what to do with the silence. I remember feeling proud that I made it out early, yet at the same time I felt unsteady, as if the routine that once annoyed me had quietly been holding me together. Many retirees across the country feel that same emotional whiplash, relief mixed with a fear that time might suddenly move too slowly, or that without a schedule they might lose their sense of direction. Friends and former coworkers might assume you're living the dream, but deep inside there's a subtle ache where structure used to be, and it takes time to understand that your worth is no longer tied to productivity. Add in the anxiety of watching savings rise and fall with every market headline, and retirement begins to feel less like freedom and more like balancing on a thin wire. The psychological shift is real. Your identity changes, your circle becomes smaller, and your days become a canvas you must fill with intention rather than obligation. And somewhere in that transition, many Americans quietly ask themselves if they made the right choice or if they stepped into retirement too soon. Number 3, money and safety, the financial realities retirees face. Retiring early in the United States forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth that your biggest financial enemy isn't the stock market, it's uncertainty, especially when it arrives at the wrong moment. I learned quickly that the sequence of returns risk can turn a perfectly healthy IRA into a shrinking lifeline if a downturn hits in your first years of withdrawals. And that fear alone can push people back into work they thought they'd left behind. Many retirees trust Social Security to fill the gap, but choosing when to claim it is a high-stakes decision that can't be undone. And the difference between filing at 62 or 70 can reshape your entire lifestyle. Medicare becomes its own puzzle, with premiums, Part B penalties, and prescription costs landing like surprises you never asked for, especially if you retire before 65 and need coverage through the marketplace. Even simple choices, like how much to withdraw during inflation spikes, can feel like walking through fog, where one wrong move creates a ripple that lasts decades. Taxes add another layer of pressure because pulling from a 401k feels safe until the IRS takes its share, and suddenly your comfortable number doesn't stretch the way you thought it would. And beneath all these decisions sits the constant awareness that people are living longer now, which is a blessing, that simultaneously threatens to drain the savings they worked a lifetime to build. Number 4, lifestyle design: health, relationships, routine, and purpose. Retirement in America becomes a very different experience when you realize it's not just a financial transition, it's a complete redesign of how you live, think, and connect with the world around you. When I first stepped away from work, I didn't expect how much I'd crave a simple routine, something that grounded my days and kept me from drifting into long stretches of aimless time that felt heavier than any office shift I ever worked. Many retirees talk about this invisible void, where the absence of deadlines slowly exposes how much of their identity was tied to their job, and rebuilding a sense of purpose becomes a task as important as managing their investments. Health takes center stage too, because appointments, medications, and the rising cost of care in the U.S. become part of your weekly rhythm, often reminding you how fragile independence can feel as the years pass. Relationships shift as well. Friends move, family gets busy, and you begin to understand that staying socially connected is something you must build intentionally rather than wait for. Some Americans find meaning through volunteering, small side passions, or part-time work not for money, but for the emotional structure it brings, while others find peace in slow mornings, long walks, and hobbies they never had time for before. And through it all, you learn that retirement doesn't automatically give you purpose. You create it, one small choice at a time, shaping a lifestyle that feels fulfilling no matter what stage of life you're entering. Number 5, common mistakes and hidden traps for U.S. retirees and near retirees. One of the most dangerous mistakes Americans make when approaching retirement is assuming that the habits they use during their working years will still protect them once the paychecks stop, even though the financial landscape shifts completely the moment they switch to withdrawals. I've seen people drain their savings too quickly because they underestimated how fast everyday costs rise when inflation creeps into groceries, utilities, and property taxes, turning a once comfortable budget into a monthly struggle. Others lock themselves into claiming Social Security early out of fear, only to realize years later that the smaller check permanently limits their lifestyle, especially when unexpected medical expenses arrive. A lot of retirees forget that Medicare doesn't cover everything, leaving them exposed to dental, vision, long-term care, and expensive medications that can quietly erode their nest egg. Some end up overinvested in aggressive portfolios because they didn't rebalance before retiring, which leaves them vulnerable when a market downturn hits at exactly the wrong time. And perhaps the most overlooked trap is the emotional spending that happens when newfound freedom meets too much time. Trips, renovations, or helping adult children can feel harmless until you notice the withdrawals climbing higher than your portfolio can recover from. These aren't failures of character, they're the blind spots that catch people by surprise because retirement isn't just a financial event. It's a psychological shift where every decision carries more weight than it ever did before. Number 6, practical action steps and mindset shifts. What ultimately saved my early retirement wasn't a miracle investment or some secret strategy. It was learning how to make calm, patient decisions even when the numbers scared me. Because retirement rewards consistency far more than intensity. I began by treating my withdrawals like a paycheck, setting a realistic monthly limit that adjusted slightly with inflation so I wasn't relying on willpower alone to control my spending. I created a simple system for reviewing my investments quarterly instead of obsessing over daily market swings, which protected my emotions as much as my portfolio and kept panic from driving my choices. I learned to view Social Security, Medicare, taxes, and healthcare not as overwhelming obstacles, but as tools that required understanding. And each time I mastered one, the entire picture of retirement felt less intimidating. Building a flexible budget allowed me to keep enjoying life without slipping into scarcity mode, because knowing where my money went actually gave me more freedom rather than less. Prioritizing health became a non-negotiable part of my routine, not just for physical well-being, but because staying strong, active, and mentally sharp is the greatest financial defense any retiree can build. And slowly, I realized that retirement isn't about avoiding fear, it's about learning to move forward even when fear whispers in your ear, trusting the systems you've built and the discipline you've grown through decades of hard work. Retiring early taught me that the real freedom in America isn't just stepping away from work. It's finally stepping away from the fear that money has quietly planted in us for decades, the fear that keeps us second-guessing every choice even after we've earned our rest. When you learn to trust your preparation, adjust your habits, and shape each day with intention, retirement becomes less about surviving and more about living in a way that feels honest, peaceful, and deeply your own. There will still be moments when the market dips, when healthcare bills arrive, or when doubt tries to shake the confidence you've built. But those moments don't have to control the entire story. You've worked too hard, for too long, to let anxiety dictate the years meant for connection, purpose, and joy. Every step you take now, whether it's refining your budget, strengthening your health, or rebuilding a routine, moves you closer to a retirement that feels secure rather than fragile. And if this video helped you understand even one part of that journey more clearly, I'd love to hear your thoughts below, because your story might be exactly what another American retiree needs to hear. If you want more guidance like this, consider subscribing so we can navigate the next chapters together, one practical, honest conversation at a time.